Well now, howdy folks, and welcome. Welcome to my campfire tonight. Pull up a log, get comfortable. Let's share some stories under these twinkling stars. Listen to those embers crackling. Smell that sweet wood smoke. Just breathe in that fresh night air. Ain't nothing like a campfire in the heart of the woods, is there? Especially when we're sharing tales of the unknown. Tonight, we're journeying deep into Bigfoot country. We're gonna spin some yarns about the big fella himself. Those stories whispered around campfires just like this one. Tales passed down through generations. Stories that make you shiver and wonder if, just maybe, there's more to the shadows than meets the eye. So, settle in, friends. Let your worries fade away like smoke into the night. You know, out here in the wilderness, we're reminded we're just a small part of something much bigger, something ancient and mysterious. These woods, they hold secrets, stories whispered on the wind through the trees, stories of creatures that walk upright, hidden amongst the shadows, creatures as old as these mountains themselves. Tonight, we're going to hear those stories. We're going to hear tell of encounters with the creature we call Bigfoot. Now, some folks say he's a myth, a tall tale. Others, well, they know different. They've seen something out here in these woods. They've heard something moving through the underbrush. And tonight, we're going to sit by the fire and listen to their stories. For generations, folks have been spotting a giant, hairy creature, a creature that walks on two legs like you and me. They call him Bigfoot in his legend. It's woven into the fabric of these woods. Some say he's a protector of the forest. Others say he's a fearsome beast, but one thing's for sure. Stories about Bigfoot, they send shivers down your spine. They remind us that there's still mystery in this world. Now, I've heard a lot of these stories. Stories whispered around campfires. Stories told with wide eyes and hushed voices. And tonight, I'm going to share some of them with you. So sit back, relax, and let these tales of the unknown carry you away. Let's begin, shall we? Our first tale takes us back to the early 1900s, way back when these woods were even wilder than they are now. We're talking about a time when loggers were first starting to cut their way through these ancient forests. Our story centers on a fella named Jedediah. Now Jedediah was a logger, tough as nails and twice as strong. He'd spent his life in these woods, knew them like the back of his calloused hand. One crisp autumn morning, Jedediah was hard at work, felling trees up in the North Valley. The sun was shining through the branches, painting the forest floor with dappled light. A perfect day for work. As he swung back his axe for another blow, he caught a glimpse of something out of the corner of his eye. Something large and dark, moving just beyond the edge of the trees. Jedediah paused, his breath catching in his throat. He lowered his axe and squinted into the shadows. At first he didn't see nothing, then it moved again. A shape, taller than a man, with broad shoulders and long dark hair. Fear pricked at Jedediah's spine, but he was a man of the woods. He knew the dangers, knew the importance of a steady hand and a clear head. He stood there, frozen, watching as the creature took a step closer. It moved with a strange, almost human grace, its long arms swinging by its side. Jedediah's heart pounded in his chest, his grip tightening on the handle of his axe. He'd heard the stories, the whispers of something large and unknown living in these woods. But this was different. This was real. The creature took another step closer, and Jedediah could see its eyes now. 2 points of yellow light glaring out from the shadows. A low growl rumbled from its chest, a sound that seemed to shake the very ground beneath Jedediah's feet. He knew in that moment that he was looking at something unlike anything he'd ever seen before. He didn't know whether to run or stand his ground. The creature seemed to sense his fear, for it stopped its advance. It stood there just beyond the reach of the sunlight, watching Jedediah with those unnervingly intelligent eyes. For what felt like an eternity, the two of them just stared at each other. Then, as quickly as it had appeared, the creature turned and melted back into the shadows. Jedediah stood there for a long moment, his heart still pounding in his chest. He couldn't explain what he'd seen, couldn't quite believe it himself, but he knew deep down that he'd caught a glimpse of something truly extraordinary. Jedediah's encounter, it became the stuff of legend in those parts. Folks whispered about the giant creature he'd seen, the way it moved, the look in its eyes. And so, the legend of Bigfoot grew, fueled by campfire stories and late-night encounters just like this one. Now our next tale takes us to the summer of '59. The air was thick with the smell of pine needles and damp earth. It's about a group of friends, college kids looking for adventure. They decided to spend a weekend camping up near Mount Adams. They were young, full of life, and had no idea what awaited them in the depths of those woods. They spent the days hiking, fishing, enjoying the great outdoors. But one night, they decided to try something a little different. See, they'd heard the local stories, the whispers of strange creatures roaming the woods at night. Now, these youngsters, they were a skeptical bunch, figured it was all tall tales and campfire stories. So they set out on a night hike, hoping to debunk the myths and have a few laughs along the way. The forest, it takes on a whole different feel at night. The shadows grow long and deep, and the moonlight paints the trees in shades of silver and black. The group, they were in high spirits at first, joking and laughing as they followed the trail deeper into the woods. But as the night wore on, the laughter died down. A strange stillness settled over the forest, broken only by the sound of their own footsteps. They started to notice things, little things at first. A rustling in the underbrush, the snap of a twig. They'd shine their flashlights into the darkness, but there was never nothing there. Just the wind through the trees and the shadows playing tricks on their eyes. But a feeling of unease started to creep over them, a prickling at the back of their necks that told them they weren't alone. As they walked, they started to hear it, a low, guttural sound, like something large was moving through the trees just beyond the reach of their lights. It seemed to be following them, keeping pace with their every step. Terror started to grip their hearts, cold and tight. They'd stop, listening intently, but the sound would fade away, leaving only the echo of their own fear ringing in their ears. One of the hikers, a young woman named Sarah, she swore she saw something, a pair of eyes glaring at them from the darkness. She told the others, her voice trembling, but they dismissed it as nerves. They told her it was just her imagination, but deep down, they were starting to wonder themselves. Section 4. The Haunting Memory. They decided to turn back, heading back to the familiar comfort of their campsite. But the feeling of being watched, it followed them all the way back. They couldn't shake the sound of that guttural breathing, the memory of those eyes glaring at them from the darkness. They made it back to their campsite safe and sound, but they were changed. The experience left an indelible mark on their souls, a reminder that there are things in these woods that we may never fully understand. From that day forward, they never went into the woods at night again. The memory of that night, it haunted their dreams, and though they never saw the creature with their own eyes, they knew, deep down, that something had been watching them that night. Something large and powerful and unknown. The legend of Bigfoot, it had become real for them. Now our next story, it takes us a little closer to home. It's about a family, just like yours or mine, out on a summer vacation. The Thompson family, they were looking forward to a week of camping, fishing, and making memories in the great outdoors. They packed up their car, a beat-up old station wagon with a dented bumper, and headed for Redwood National Park. The kids, 10-year-old Billy and his little sister, 8-year-old Emily, they were beside themselves with excitement. Seemed like the drive took forever. They finally arrived at their campsite, nestled deep in the heart of the ancient redwood forest. Towering trees, hundreds of feet tall, formed a cathedral of green overhead, sunlight filtering through the branches like stained glass. The air was cool and damp, filled with the scent of pine needles and damp earth. It was the kind of place that whispered secrets on the wind. They spent their days hiking amongst the giants, their necks craned upwards in awe. Billy, he imagined dinosaurs roaming through those woods, their footsteps shaking the ground. Emily, she collected pine cones and pretended they were tiny forest creatures. At night, they gathered around the campfire, the flames dancing in their eyes. Their parents, John and Mary, they told stories of brave adventurers and mischievous forest spirits. One evening, after a hearty meal of hot dogs and baked beans, John broke out his guitar. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, John strummed out familiar tunes. The kids sang along, their voices blending with the crackling fire and the gentle whisper of the wind through the trees. Section 3. The Encounter. It was a perfect night, the kind of night that etched itself into your memory. But as the moon rose high in the sky, casting long, eerie shadows through the trees, a strange feeling settled over the campsite. It started with a sound, a low, guttural growl that seemed to come from the depths of the forest. John stopped playing, his brow furrowed in concern. Mary, she pulled the children closer, her eyes darting nervously around the campsite. "What was that, Daddy?" whispered Billy, his eyes wide with a mixture of fear and excitement. John put a finger to his lips, listening intently. The sound came again, closer this time, followed by the distinct sound of heavy footsteps crashing through the underbrush. A shiver ran down Mary's spine. She knew deep down that something was out there, watching them from the darkness. John, he grabbed his flashlight and shone it into the darkness, but the beam was swallowed up by the dense undergrowth. The footsteps grew louder, and then they saw it. A massive figure, at least 8 feet tall, covered in dark hair, emerged from the trees. It stood there, silhouetted against the moonlit sky, its eyes glaring at them with a mixture of curiosity and caution. The family froze. Their breath caught in their throats. They had never seen anything like it before. Time seemed to stand still as they stared at the creature, their hearts pounding in their chests. Then, as quickly as it had appeared, the figure turned and melted back into the shadows. The sound of its heavy footsteps faded into the distance, leaving a silence that was somehow even more unnerving than the growl that had preceded it. That night, huddled together in their tent, the Thompson family didn't sleep a wink. They whispered about what they had seen, their voices hushed, their minds racing. They knew, in that moment, that they had witnessed something truly extraordinary. Now, y'all know I've told you about folks from all walks of life seeing Bigfoot. Loggers, hikers, even families on vacation. But tonight, we're going to hear from someone who spends their life in these woods. Someone who knows every twist and turn of these trails, every whisper of the wind through these trees. This here's the story of Park Ranger Bill, a man who's dedicated his life to protecting these woods and the creatures that call them home. Now, Ranger Bill, he's heard all the stories, all the rumors about Bigfoot. He's seen the blurry photos, heard the shaky eyewitness accounts, and for years he dismissed them all as tall tales and overactive imaginations. He figured folks just wanted to believe in something bigger than themselves. That all changed one rainy afternoon when Ranger Bill was making his rounds. The sky, it was the color of charcoal, and the rain, it was coming down in sheets, making the trail slick and muddy. He was heading back to his cabin, hoping to get a fire going and warm up with a cup of coffee when he spotted something strange in the mud. At first glance, it looked like a bear had been walking on its hind legs. But as he got closer, he realized these tracks were different. They were too big, too evenly spaced, and they led straight into the heart of the old-growth forest, a place even bears rarely ventured. Ranger Bill? He crouched down, examining the tracks carefully. He measured the stride, the depth of the impressions, the way the toes splayed out. He'd seen enough animal tracks in his time to know these weren't made by any creature he'd ever encountered before. A shiver ran down his spine. Despite the rain cooling his skin, he thought about all the stories he'd dismissed, all the eyewitnesses he'd doubted. Could it be that there was some truth to the legend of Bigfoot? Now, Ranger Bill, he was a man of science, a man who believed in evidence and reason. But standing there in the rain, looking at those tracks, he couldn't shake the feeling that something extraordinary had passed that way. He couldn't explain it, not with logic or reason, but he knew in his gut that he was looking at something beyond the realm of his understanding. Ranger Bill, he never spoke publicly about what he saw that day. He knew folks would think he was crazy, that he'd finally cracked under the pressure of too many lonely nights in the woods. But the experience changed him. It opened his mind to the possibility that there were things in this world that science couldn't yet explain. He carried the memory of those tracks with him, a reminder that even in the most familiar of places, there were still mysteries to be uncovered, wonders to behold. And he learned that sometimes the greatest adventure is simply keeping an open mind and respecting the unknown. Well now, friends, our campfire's burning low. Those embers, they're glowing like fireflies in the night, just like those stories we shared. They're fading into the darkness. But even though the flames are dying down, I hope those tales, they keep you warm tonight. Each one of those stories, they're a reminder that there's still mystery out there in the world. Things we can't explain, creatures that make us question what we think we know. Maybe Bigfoot is real. Maybe he ain't. But that sense of wonder, that thrill of the unknown, that's what keeps us looking up at the stars, ain't it? If you enjoyed these tales around the campfire tonight, well, I invite you to subscribe to my channel and tell your friends about it too. We'll be sharing more stories like these. Stories that'll keep you on the edge of your seat. Stories that'll make you think twice about what's lurking in the shadows. Out here in the wilderness, under the watch of those ancient stars, we're all connected. Connected by those stories, those mysteries that bind us together. So, keep looking up at the stars, keep listening to the wind through the trees, and keep that sense of wonder alive. Now, it's getting late, and the night she's calling. Time for you to get some shut-eye. Let those stories we shared tonight drift through your dreams. Maybe you'll even catch a glimpse of that big fella yourself. Until next time, friends, keep your feet warm, your hearts light, and your minds open to the wonders that await just beyond the campfire's glow. Good night, y'all. Sleep tight, and don't let the Bigfoot bite.